Hi everyone, I hope you're staying safe and well. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, I can say that I'm feeling better with just really mild symptoms, and I'm honestly just so looking forward to getting to be able to meet with all of you in person when it's safe. And just our family has been absolutely blown away by the amount of chesed that we've seen in this amazing community. And so on behalf of myself and Orit and our children, I just want to thank so many of you who have reached out, who've offered to help, and just made us feel so welcomed and so embraced as we were going through this bit of a strange transition at the beginning of our tenure here in Riverdale. But I figured if I couldn't be with you in person, perhaps I could at least share just maybe a brief thought, a brief idea of Torah as we enter into Shabbat. You know, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in the 4th chapter, teaches us in the name of Rabbi Shimon that Shlosha Ketarim, that there are 3 crowns. There is the Keter Torah, the Keter Kahuna, and the Keter Malchus. That there is the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, but there's also the crown of royalty, of Malchus, of being a king. And Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah continues and teaches that there's also a 4th, which is the Keter Shem Tov, which is Olal Gabeyen, which is the crown of a good name that supersedes all of the other crowns. But in many ways, I want to focus on those first 3 because they really are found in this week's Parsha. Our Parsha is the classic source for these types of crowns of leadership. And there's been so much that's been written. There are so many leadership lessons that we can learn from this week's Parsha. But I want to actually direct your attention to what I think is an often overlooked leadership position, which is known as the Kohen Mashuach Milchama. That is the Kohen that would actually accompany the army out to battle. It would be this person's job to speak words of encouragement, to support the soldiers when they would go to battle, and ultimately, if necessary, to also provide exemptions to certain groups of people, as are outlined in our Parsha. And unlike a Melech, or unlike a Kohen Gadol, for example, who passed down their position of leadership as a Yerusha, as an inheritance from father to son, the Rambam, based on the Gemara and Yoma, teaches in Perek Daled of Hilchos Klei HaMikdash that the position of Kohen Meshuach Milchama, by contrast, is actually not a position that is inherited. You see, it was really just granted based on a Kohen's credentials. This means that when a Kohen Meshuach Milchama would die, Chas v'Shalom, his son was no more eligible to assume the position than any other Kohen. And perhaps we can maybe suggest that there is actually a fundamental difference in these roles of Kohen Gadol and Kohen Meshuach Milchama. You see, the Kohen Meshuach Milchama had a different job. His job was to inspire, to encourage, to reassure, to uplift soldiers that were about to embark on a scary or maybe even frightening military mission. We needed somebody who had incredible oratory ability, who was a fabulous public speaker, a person who was blessed with sensitivity but also eloquence to achieve these lofty goals. And when it comes to this position, family background, honestly, is of no significance. Rather, the most important factor, when you think about it, is really one's credentials. Because the role of Kohen Meshuach Milchama, it needed to be reserved for the most talented, inspiring, and skilled orator. But the truth is, I think that there's actually a deeper lesson here for us all, especially during this time of year as we think about this Kohen Meshuach Milchama. As you know, many aspects in our religious life can be best described as being hereditary. Whether it's our strengths, our weaknesses, they're so often determined the areas that we might excel on based on our background. And like the son of a Kohen Gadol, that family background, it does have a big impact on where and what we become. But there's actually another aspect of religious life that I think doesn't depend whatsoever on family background. And that's the ability to face and to overcome spiritual challenges and to muster encouragement and optimism for ourselves and for others towards this end. You see, unlike the roles in our lives that we find ourselves in that are influenced by our family background, the need to quote-unquote battle and to struggle spiritually is something that's shared by every single one of us. You see, no matter who we are, no matter how we were raised, we all need to be our own Kohen Mashuach Milchama. We all need to fortify ourselves with strength and determination to overcome the obstacles that we so frequently face in our pursuit of spiritual greatness. And when it comes to this role, a person's yichus, a person's family or background is simply not as relevant. And perhaps we can also suggest that this approach also sheds light on a comment from the Gemara in Sanhedrin about the obligation of a melech to write a Sefer Torah, which we also find in this week's Parsha. There, the Gemara makes it clear that every melech, that every single king needs to write their own personal Torah scroll. You see, it's not enough simply to use a Torah that was inherited from a person's father, even though the words are the same, even though our spiritual inheritance is the same. It's incumbent on every melech to write his own Sefer Torah, the same way it's incumbent on each of us to write our own Torah, to be our own Kohen Meshuach Milchama, as we overcome our own spiritual struggles. And as we enter into this month of Elul, with Rosh Hashanah now just a few weeks away, let us work to create our own personal connection and bond with a Torah that simply transcends our upbringing or any sense of preservation from our parents and those that came before us. Let us gird ourselves for this spiritual battle. Let us become our own Kohen Meshuach Milchama. Let us work hard to create a deep and meaningful spiritual connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu that is rooted in our own investment of hard work and effort each and every day. And so with that, I can tell you I cannot wait to see you, to spend time with you in person when it's safe to do so. But in the meantime, our family wishes you and yours a Shabbat Shalom, a peaceful and a restful Shabbat.